Welcome back to Big Sky Buckets. I'm Big Sky, and today we're going to continue our off-season 24 power rankings going into the 2025 NBA season. It's right on the horizon, and we're going to continue with a brand new tier. This is beginning of the top 10, and we're going to start right outside of it, the team on the outside looking in at number 11, sixth in the East, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Point guard, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell at the shooting guard, Max Strus most likely at the small forward position, Evan Mobley at power forward, and Jarrett Allen at center. Look, this team in the past couple of years, despite either bad vibes, weird injuries, and with JB Bickerstaff, who I don't really, like I've said before when we got to the Pistons, don't have as much of an opinion on as a head coach, found a way to win 48 to 50 plus games in the past 2 years. The biggest issues I have, one, I am very stubborn on the fact that I do not believe in the backcourt of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. I think Darius Garland needs to change the scenery. He has gotten worse every single year since Donovan Mitchell has got there. And then outside of that year, the year before, when they were in the play-in and lost to the Hawks, Darius Garland was an all-star, and he looked great. And I think that's simply because he needs the ball in his hands. And then collectively, even though Donovan Mitchell, I think, is the better player, better shot creator, he's gotten better at playmaking. He may not be as good as Darius Garland is at playmaking, but he's better at defense now. He worked on that last year. He's not a cone on defense. He's underrated. He's got to be the guy. And I think putting him at the point guard because of his size would work out fine, and then trading Darius Garland to a place where he can have the ball in his hands and be a point guard and put a two-way player, a genuine two-way player next to Donovan Mitchell would astronomically raise the ceiling and floor of this team. That's just my hot take on everything. I think they can get marginally better with a brand new head coach offensively, and I think they should be just as good, if not marginally worse, just because you might change some things. Defensively, this team will most likely win 48 games. I'm just not as big of a believer because I'm ready for this backcourt to change. I think the counterpoint is that what we saw from Evan Mobley in the playoffs, if that can continue this regular season, yeah, they're going to be closer to 4 than they are to 6. Still, regardless of that, in the regular season, this team should still be good. So I have them at 11th. I just think there's a couple of teams I'm a little bit either higher on or can just bank on a little bit more than the Cleveland Cavaliers. And at number 10, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm a little bit lower on them, but coming in at 5th in the East. My biggest issue, let's start with the positives. Just like we talked about with the Cavs, they can win those games. You know who can win more games? The Bucks, just riding off of Giannis, mainly Giannis, but also Dame every now and then, can carry you a stretch of games. Let's talk about the cons. I don't like the backcourt defense still. And the ceiling and floor of this team is stunted by a couple of things, in my opinion. One, I know Doc Rivers should be able to win you games in the regular season, but I think he did a bad job coming in and immediately making them worse last year after having what seemed to be one of the consensus 2 worst head coaches in the league, and Adrian Griffin got them to 30 or more wins by the All-Star break, and they still failed to get 50 wins. Brook Lopez 2 years ago, just 2, so not this past season, but the year before, came in 2nd in Defensive Player of the Year voting. He looked washed, basically, last year. It was part of it at first seemed to be they weren't running drop coverage, which is where his bread and butter is as the rim protector of this team who can stretch the floor. But as time progressed, it just became abundantly clear he's moving a little bit slower. I've always been a huge Brook Lopez fan, but the problem is it's going to be really hard to try and trade him or someone else and try and maintain the same level of productivity that this team has, so I think they're stuck with the team they have. The next thing, like I said, Gary Trent Jr. should help offensively, and this team, I think, will be very good offensively. I think they'll be solid enough defensively, but that backcourt defense is going to be rough. It's going to be very rough. And then finally, Chris Middleton had surgery on both feet. I really have no idea what to expect from him coming back, but just like Brook Lopez, he's kind of aging a little bit quicker. And then the final cherry on top of this team, and why I'm have them at 10 and 5th in the East instead of like 3rd, 2nd, or even 4th. I just don't like the vibes of this team. This is a weird analysis, but what has come out from the time that Doc Rivers got there after the trade deadline last year, or after the All-Star break last year, just kind of already having excuses prepared, to Giannis just recently saying, if we can't get out of the first round this year, then they might trade me, which is like the most informal trade request kind of like pressure he's putting on the front office. And they don't have assets to make a lot of moves. They burned those in the Dame trade. And then, you know what? This is the final thing. I'm sorry, like going on the rant. Sometimes I just go off in different directions. If two coaches could not get them to run the one play they need to run the most in a Dame and Giannis pick and roll, I just think it's a personnel thing of one or both of them doesn't want to run the pick and roll enough. Because it should be the most unstoppable play in basketball, but they never run it, or it's so few and far between. It drives you insane. This team is still a top tier contender, but I think they might take a little bit of a step back in the regular season because of age, because of coaching, and everything I've laid out. So that's my hot take. This is one of my hot takes. I think they're number 10 in terms of regular season teams and 5th in the East. And then to round out this tier at number 9, to round out the tier, one of my hottest takes, I guess, at 5th in the West. In the winners of the Pacific Division, the Sacramento Kings. I have talked about two other teams that I think can win regular season games based on their offense opposed to their defense. To me, this is the best team to win based on their offense versus their defense. De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and DeMar DeRozan, collectively, despite spacing issues, despite defensive issues, should raise the floor offensively, period. I think they'll be one of the most creative offenses in the league. And I think going back to how they won 2 years ago, banking on offense while having acceptable defense with Keegan Murray, Keon Ellis, and a couple other wings off the bench, will lead this team to win more games than most people will anticipate. I think in terms of regular season, this is a team designed to win in the regular season. I think in terms of ceiling, they're immediately a first-round exit. I have absolutely no faith once they get to the playoffs, but I believe this is a playoff team. This is not a play-in team. This is a playoff team. It's my hottest take because, first of all, you get two of the clutchest players in the game in DeMar DeRozan and De'Aaron Fox. One of the more interesting things is that if De'Aaron Fox, what he has been doing in the past couple of years is trying to expand his game to the three-point line a lot more and taking more three-point shots. You have three players that are going to want to shoot in three different locations. Domantas wants to get to the rim. He will take mid-range shots. He will take three-pointers, especially during the regular season, but mostly his bread and butter comes from playing around the rim. He's also one of the best passing big men in the game, and that's how their offense flows so well. DeMar is going to get most of his points from the mid-range, and then therefore that allows De'Aaron Fox to explicitly try and keep getting better at being a three-point shooter. All of those things work in tandem, as weird as it is in this modern NBA. I think people look at this team and they think this is going to be too clunky of a fit, but I'm a little bit more optimistic. Something about this just feels like, one, if the Bulls really suck this year, it's not just because they lost Caruso. It's because they lost the guy who carried them for so long in DeMar DeRozan. And that is simply who he is. He's a phenomenal regular season player, and he's gotten better at playmaking, but those three collectively should be able to win you games, plus still having Malik Monk on this team, who has been phenomenal for them. Keegan Murray, if he takes a leap, which I envision he will, because now he's kind of like the fourth option. I think it takes a load off of his shoulders in terms of pressure, and he can just get better at a linear rate, and that works itself out. And Mike Brown wants these guys to go fast, and these three with everyone else on this team should work in tandem extremely well. Biggest issue I have is like the Kevin Huerter thing. I still think they should make one more trade, but again, not projecting for that. I think this is a 50-win team. I really do. They're not in that upper echelon of the West. The top four are the top four. Most people are going to have the same top four, I think, in my opinion, in the West. But they're just right outside it, and that's why I have them at 9. This team's going to be fun to watch. They're one of my more anticipated teams because, A, I'm banking on them to be the 9th best team in the regular season, 5th in the West. I just think it's a recipe to win the regular season. I think their ceiling is super low in terms of the playoffs, but if we're ranking based on the regular season, I have a lot of faith in the Sacramento Kings. Their starting lineup should look like De'Aaron Fox at the point guard position. There's some questions about the shooting guard, but I think it will be Keon Ellis for defensive purposes. Just having a little bit there should be helpful, especially as I've talked about. Backcourt defense is really important in today's perimeter game. DeMar DeRozan at the small forward position, Keegan Murray at the 4, who is one of the better younger two-way players in the league and one of the best shooters. He's ironically one of the better shooters. So Keegan Murray at the power forward position and Domantas Sabonis at the center position, who was their best player last year. I know a lot of people have a lot of hot takes on Domantas Sabonis, but in the regular season, this guy gets it done. He's a double-double machine, every now and then some triple-doubles, but he's going to average 20 points. He's going to average over 10 rebounds. I just think this team's going to be an offensive machine, and I think it's going to work fine because they got better. They switched Harrison Barnes, who I hate, and I barely think he's an NBA player, for DeMar DeRozan. That's inherently adding multiple wins onto your win total, and they had 46, 47 wins last year? What's 3 more? That's 50 wins. So, yeah, that's what I got for you guys today. Welcome to the top 10 tier. And like, comment, subscribe. I'd really appreciate all the support. We're going to keep this going up until the regular season starts on Tuesday. Peace.